अस्सलाम 11 जून 2021 है आज। डॉन डेली रीडिंग का पहला दिन है। कोशिश करूँगा डॉन की डेली रीडिंग रोज़ करके और यूट्यूब पे लगा दूँ। डॉन की जो हमने डेली रीडिंग करनी है वो इस तरह से करनी है कि हमने डॉन की जो मेन पेज है वो पढ़ना है। ये मेन पेज फ्रंट पेज है। लेटर्स टू द एडिटर्स पढ़ने हैं हमने। ओपिनियंस पढ़ने हैं। जो लास्ट बैक पेज है वो पढ़ना है हमने। दो इंटरनेशनल पेजेस पढ़ने हैं और दो स्पोर्ट्स के पेजेस की सिर्फ हेडिंग्स पढ़नी है हमने। तो इस तरह हमने डॉन की रीडिंग करनी है। तो स्टार्ट करते हैं। बिस्मिल्लाह। अ, अगर कोई इसमें वर्ड्स आते हैं जो कि हमें नहीं पता, जो न्यू है हमारे लिए, तो ऐसा करेंगे कि इनको गूगल पे सर्च करेंगे और उसके अगर मैं उर्दू मतलब समझा सका तो वो भी समझाऊंगा। तो इससे एक तो करंट अफेयर्स में आपका बहुत फ़ायदा होगा और दूसरा ये डॉन की रीडिंग हो जाएगी जो आमतौर पे हम वैसे तो नहीं कर पाते। और वीडियो देख लेंगे तो उससे आपकी हो जाएगी। तो पहले ये सबसे पहले ये फोकस ऑन बूस्टिंग ग्रोथ, फाइटिंग इन्फ्लेशन, शौकत तरीन बजट आ रहा है तो उस हिसाब से ये न्यूज़ आई है। लॉन्चिंग इकोनॉमिक सर्वे 2021, मिनिस्टर says IMF told power tariffs, income tax won't be increased, next year's budget aims to support poor, create 2 million jobs, FBI will no longer issue notices, willful non-filers to be sent to jail, revenue collection to be raised by 26% to meet IMF target of 5.9 trillion rupees for next year. Power sector state-owned entities termed biggest challenges for government country. State-owned entities जैसे PIO हो गई, steel mill है. China being requested to make Pakistan part of its industrial sunset process. इंडस्ट्रियल सनसेट प्रोसेस एक तरह से इंडस्ट्रियल जो इनकी टेक्नोलॉजी का एडवांसमेंट चल रही है पाकिस्तान के अंदर वो है। As the country's economy showed broad-based recovery from the low base of a historically bad year, broad-based meaning हर तरह की इंडस्ट्री के अंदर। Finance Minister Shaukat Tareen on Thursday promised to roll out a budget for the next year that would switch gear to growth from stabilization, fight inflation, and support the poor. At the launch of the Economic Survey 2021, the minister said the International Monetary Fund had been informed of the red lines. We have told the IMF that power tariffs and personal income taxes will not be increased because we don't want to burden the poor or the salaried class any further. But we will increase the revenue collection by almost 36% to meet the IMF target of 5.9 trillion rupees for the next year from over 4.7 trillion rupees this year. He said, "No, sir, we can no more make repeated tariff increases, nor can we further burden the salaried people. We have told them, the IMF, this is the Prime Minister's red line," he said, adding that talks with the IMF were continuing, but there was no agreement. He said the common objective of the two sides was to have a sustainable growth, but have different routes in mind to achieve that. Besides the tariff increases, the IMF was pushing for 150 billion rupees worth of additional personal income tax revenue on top of existing 113 billion rupees. This is not justified, he said, adding that further tariff increases would demolish the industry and put an unbearable burden on the poor due to its cascading effect. Cascading effect का मतलब होता है कि एक के ऊपर एक जो है वो इफेक्ट जो आता है। फॉर एग्जांपल एक चीज़ हुई, उसके इफेक्ट की वजह से एक और चीज़ हुई, फिर उसके इफेक्ट की वजह से एक और चीज़ हुई। इसको हम कहते हैं कैस्केडिंग इफेक्ट ऑन इन्फ्लेशन। वी विल सिर्फ कैस्केडिंग इफेक्ट, इन्फ्लेशन के ऊपर वो इफेक्ट है। वी विल एड्रेस द पावर सेक्टर विद अल्टरनेटिव का मतलब ऑपोजिट या डिफरेंट means, and this year's build up to circular debt will be 150 billion rupees lower than that of last year. Circular debt का मतलब होता है गर्दिशी कर्ज। Mr. Tareen agreed that the power sector was the biggest challenge not only for the government but also for the country. He said the IMF had been given a revenue plan of 5.9 trillion rupees for the next year, but it would take time to reach an agreement. An official on the sidelines said the 5.9 trillion rupees revenue plan was unacceptable to the IMF, which considered that some of the revenue sources, mostly claimed to be supported by administrative measures, were not bankable and had failed in the past. Bankable मतलब उससे जो है वो कोई monetary फायदा नहीं हो रहा। The finance minister said the broadening of revenue base would be visible next year that would be achieved through use of technology and third-party audits and by eradicating harassment. The Federal Board of Revenue (FBR) would no longer issue notices, but instead there would be risk-based third-party audits of 3 to 4% of revenue, and the willful non-filer and underfiler would be punished, he said. Willful non-filers would be sent to jail immediately as the government wanted to create deterrence for tax evasion. Deterrence का मतलब किसी चीज से रोकना. In the longer term, he added, there would be only two taxes on income and consumption as he wanted to put in place progressive taxation. Progressive का मतलब जिससे आगे फायदा होने वाला हो. Progressive taxation and gradually आहिस्ता आहिस्ता withholding tax and turnover tax would be eliminated. खत्म कर देना. Mr. Tareen declined to comment on the future direction of the State Bank's policy rate, though he criticized the past 13.25% rate, but said he had shared his thoughts that the policy rate should look at the core inflation instead of overall inflation, and hopefully they would consider this. He said food inflation had nothing to do with SBB's discount rate and pertained का मतलब उससे relevant, उस चीज के जो है वो इफेक्ट करना या उस चीज से relevant, pertained more to the demand, supply, and administrative issues. He said that besides the power sector, state-run entities were another challenge and drain on public finance. Drain मतलब उसकी वजह से पैसे जो है वो जा रहे हैं, नुकसान हो रहा है. On public finance that would be addressed in the coming fiscal year. He said that 15 highest loss-making entities out of 85 would be handed over to a board within the privatization commission comprising the people of highest caliber matlab highest qualifications, who would turn them around and divest 26% of the shares. Divest का मतलब investment का opposite होता है. Divest investment लगाना तो investment कहते हैं. Divestment का मतलब होता है investment निकालना. Mr. Tareen said that in order to increase foreign dollar inflows का मतलब पैसे आना, the budget would ensure steps for increasing exports because the record remittances मतलब जो पैसे पाकिस्तान में बाहर जो हमारे पाकिस्तानी रहते हैं वो भेज रहे हैं उनको remittances के of about $29 billion might not be sustainable से मुराद के लॉन्ग लास्टिंग इफेक्ट इसके नहीं आने वाले या ये लॉन्ग लास्टिंग नहीं रहने वाली चीज़. अगर वो नॉट बी सस्टेनेबल का मतलब होता है वो लॉन्ग लास्टिंग रहेगी ये चीज़ के आगे बहुत जाके फायदे होंगे going forward unless further innovations were introduced. He said the focus of the budget would remain on the construction sector. He said China was being requested to make Pakistan part of its industrial sunset process, under which it was outsourcing 85 million jobs to some African countries by effectively utilizing the CPEC. We have offered them to provide all sorts of incentives to Chinese industries for their location to Pakistan's special economic zones for export. Unless we do this, how are we going to make payments for debt and investments? In addition, another $79 billion investment would be coming in the shape of the ML1 railway project. The minister said maximum incentives FIDE were being provided in the budget to increase exports on the recommendations of the Ministries of Commerce and Industries, besides making a special offers to increase information technology exports by $40 billion in 10 years. टॉकिंग अबाउट प्रोविजनल प्रोविजनल का मतलब होता है कि इस पे अभी बातचीत चल रही है या ये प्रपोज्ड है. Provisional economic results of the current year, Mr. Tareen said 3.94% GDP growth rate was a success of the economic and prudent का मतलब कि अच्छी तरह से जो है जिसको हमने केटर किया. इसका हम डेफिनेशन देख भी लेते हैं एक बार कंफर्म करने के लिए. Acting with or showing care and thought for the future. ठीक है जी. Prudent measures जो यहाँ पे हमने बताया. Prudent lockdown policies of the government and all targets were surpassed. Despite various challenges, the economy was moving progressively on a higher inclusive and sustainable growth path. Inclusive मतलब कि हर चीज को एक साथ जमा कर लेना. On the back of various measures and achievements during the year. The minister said the economy rebounded. Rebounded मतलब दोबारा वापसी जो है वो आई. rebounded strongly after last year's COVID-19 impact and negative 0.47% performance and posted 3.494% growth this year, even though the target was 2.1%, and international agencies predicted even lower growth. He said the growth was supported by an almost 9% jump in large scale manufacturing (LSM), owing to subsidized electricity and gas rates, and 2.77% growth in agriculture, following 4 out of 5 bumper crops. Bumper crops का मतलब crops जो है तो expectations से ज़्यादा हो जाए. The minister said Pakistan had made a tangible progress. Tangible मतलब कि on the ground जो नजर आए physically. Tangible progress on Financial Action Task Force (FATF's) action plan and expressed the hope that the country would get relief in the coming review as relevant committees had shown satisfaction, which also resulted in Amazon putting Pakistan on its sellers list. He said he targeted the next year's budget to create 2 million jobs, which was a must to absorb 60% of the youth population of 25 to 30 years of age. Prior to COVID-19, the working population was 55.74 million, which declined to 35.04 million, indicating that people either lost their jobs or were not able to work. But the number returned to 52.56 million till October 2020 as the economy witnessed a V-shaped recovery. V-shaped का मतलब होता है एक दफ़ा जब वो टॉप पर थी फिर वो नीचे आई फिर दोबारा वो टॉप पर चली गई, इसको कहते हैं V-shaped recovery in economy. The finance minister also hinted at major restructuring का मतलब होता है कि दोबारा एक चीज़ बनाना या अच्छी तरह से उसको रीएक्टिवेट करना. Restructuring of the country's financial sector to expand access of small and medium enterprises and low-income people to credit. Additionally, he said regional banks will be established in order to support geographical expansion of credit and back SMEs, short medium enterprises, as the current banking sector credit was heavily skewed. Skewed मतलब एक तरफ bias हो जाना, एक तरफ जो है वो tilt हो जाना, इसको हम कहते हैं skew, was heavily skewed in favor of big cities. The country's entire credit is used in 9 big cities, while deposits come from across the country. Mr. Thareen said the financial sector's contribution to GDP was just 33%, despite its sound footings, compared to 50% in Bangladesh and 250% in China. So ये तो कंप्लीट हो गया है.